CEO, Carly Colgan. Carly comes to us from South Puget Sound Habitat in Olympia, Washington. She built that organization up quite a bit, took it from being in debt and building a few homes to out of debt and a pipeline of 174 homes. So they were very happy. They were very sad to lose her. We were very happy to bring her on. So I wanted to formally introduce her to the committee here.
Yeah, so it's great to meet all of you, and I look forward to great opportunity to work with you and all that we can do for affordable housing in the city of Bend.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else for public comment? All right, seeing. Someone's got their finger on it.
That's Rachel, I think. Okay. Thanks.
All right. The committee, has everyone had an opportunity to review the August minutes? Comment on them if you needed to. We have a motion to approve or discussion.
I motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Joanna. All right, by a show of hands, all in favor of approving the minutes as they've been published. 1, 2, and we're unanimous. Thank you. All right, and now for conflict of interest disclosures. Is there anything on the agenda for the committee that I'll say that we have coming up? If there's any potential or actual conflicts of interest? This is the time to please disclose those. And I expect at least one. We'll start here to my left. Seeing none from Allison. Go ahead.
Me. Okay. I'm not totally sure that this is accurate or not, so you guys are going to have to help me. But in the application for the pilot project for the middle income housing, Neighbor Impact lists my company as one of their partners in lending. So I'm not sure if I'm allowed to be a part of that discussion or not. So I wanted to just bring that up and hopefully ask for some guidance.
Absolutely. Well, we'll look to our legal staff to go through that with you.
Thank you.
Hi, Elizabeth Oshel from the city attorney's office. So your company is listed as associated with one of the applicants.
That's correct.
And so the application could or result in a financial benefit or detriment to your company.
I believe that's correct. I mean, it might be considered that way.
Okay, so because you're making a recommendation on funding, then you can, with this disclosure, you can go ahead and continue to participate. And the recommendation will go to city council. City council is the final decision maker. So it's just a potential conflict.
Okay,
So
so I
you
can stay put.
Disclose and keep going.
Great, thank you.
I'll stay.
And I wanted to just bring up a potential conflict, not sure if it is, but with the Hayden application, because one of the project proposals say they will sell to COBA members, and I sit in the COBA seat in this committee. I just wanted to disclose that. I don't have any personal financial gain. I do not tend to be an applicant to purchase a lot if that project is funded, but
So it sounds like to the extent you have an association with COBA, or they may be a client, or you might work for them, that this decision could have a financial
well, I don't
impact
work for them.
Okay.
I mean, I just sit in
that recommended seat. Okay.
So I don't foresee a conflict.
Sounds like if it's a potential conflict, if it's a conflict at all, it's just potential, because this decision is a recommendation to city council, and this discussion only could have some sort of financial benefit or detriment.
For the
FDC exemptions is a
for
decision.
the public meeting, we'll go over those again, specifically for the SDCs.
Okay.
So yes, this is for other items on the agenda that are not the cable public hearing.
You can keep going, it sounds like.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Potential conflict of interest if any of these applicants are awarded, and further on down the line, if any of their clients choose to utilize my services, I might work with them, but I have no financial gain from them getting awarded.
Anyone on this side?
Potential conflict that I serve on the board of directors for Neighbor Impact, that I have volunteer capacity and no financial gain.
All right, excellent. Any others?
Potential conflict would be that I'm just in the process of selling finished lots to Habitat, not these lots, but separate ones.
All right. Great, well, Elizabeth.
Thanks, everybody.
So. I messed that up on the schedule, didn't I, Rachel? I thought we had a couple items before the caper. Okay. Yeah, so let's move on schedule. We'll move into the consolidated annual performance evaluation report, which I always refer to as a caper, and Rachel will be presenting that. So this is a public hearing, so we'll consider this hearing open.
All right, so the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, commonly referred to as the CAPER, measures the performance of CDBG investments each year. This year's CAPER adds up the persons and households served based on goals set up in the 2019 to 2023 consolidated plan. Some highlights. Oh, I had like slides, but it's not a lengthy slideshow, so I can talk through
Rachel,
this.
can you tell me what CDBG stands for?
Community Development Block Grant.
Thank you.
Yes.
Excellent.
Some highlights of Community Development Block Grant funding include for every $1 spent of CDBG funds, the city leveraged an additional $8. 4 homes were constructed and sold to moderate income households on land purchased with CDBG funds. Programs funded served 5,263 individuals in Ben's community with case management, overnight shelter, or medical services. Those 4 households that purchased the constructed homes were also given down payment assistance to purchase those homes through Community Development Block Grant funds. And the funding sheltered 3,217 persons over the year. So those are just some of the highlights from the CAPER. I hope you all will had an opportunity to read over the CAPER. And with that, we will continue with the public hearing and see if there's any public comment.
We don't have an item on this particular piece for conflict of interest, so let's do public comment and then a second disclosure of potential conflicts of interest. Elizabeth, is that reasonable?
If your disclosure didn't relate to the CAPER, then.
Yes. Yes. So then let's do that next for folks who need to have a disclosure related to the CAPER specifically. Are there any of those that need to be gone over? Seeing one, yes.
I just have a question. So the CAPER, as I understand it, is just basically a program evaluation.
Yes.
So what would our conflict of interest be related to that?
Two chairs. So the conflict of interest declaration is if the decision before you or the deliberation before you, a potential conflict would be if that deliberation could have a financial benefit or detriment on yourself, a business with which you're associated with, a family member, a business with which a family member is associated with, or any of your clients. So I guess if you or any of those entities might be an applicant under these criteria, that could be a way you could have a potential conflict. There may be other ways, but it kind of depends what the decision is and what your relationships are. Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, so now we will look for public comment on the consolidated performance evaluation report. Any public comment at all from online? Nothing online. Anyone in the audience? Okay. All right. Well, then we'll close the hearing and open for committee discussion. Having reviewed the, I guess, shortish document. What items come up that this committee would like to discuss or look at as this program continues?
Pretty straightforward.
Okay. Hearing none, then is there a motion to approve this caper?
I move to approve the caper.
I'll
Thank
second.
you. Thank you. In a vote, I raise a hand or I. Also an aye. All right. I believe that's unanimous. Thank you. All right, then on to our next agenda item. And for SDC exemptions. You have a presentation, Rachel?
And I don't have a slideshow, but just to make sure that our new committee members are aware. System development charges are one-time fees imposed on new development or redevelopment with increased need of existing infrastructure. The fee is intended to recover costs of existing and planned water, sewer, and transportation expenses. The Affordable Housing Advisory Committee became the approving body for the SDC exemptions for affordable housing developments in 2017. And prior to 2017, City Council approved these exemptions. The Affordable Housing Advisory Committee makes recommendations to Bend Park and Recreation District to consider SDC waivers for the affordable housing development it approves for SDC exemptions. However, in 2019, when Bend Parks and Recreation District adopted their SDC waiver process, they only allowed affordable housing developments to be waived if they were either at 60% AMI for rentals or 80% AMI for affordable home ownership developments. These 108 units proposed will be at 80% AMI as rentals, and so they are not eligible for the parks SDC waivers.
For the parks SDC waivers, just my curiosity, because we do have a set number, how are we tracking towards that number?
So we have 16 left for the year, and there is no nothing in place for after the beginning of
How many have been
2024.
used so far? Just to give us an idea of scale.
Total.
So far this year, how many have you used?
So far this year, we get 75 a year.
So we're 50 some into it.
Yes,
There's only 16.
there's only 16 left.
Has council discussed what
So-
happens when we hit that cap?
They have not yet. And it's getting close to the end of the year, so the housing department certainly has a sense of urgency in how we approach this.
We do have somebody tentatively, correct? Towards the end of the year, so that.
Oh, there's applicants that will apply for those last 16, those 75 will be used up. However, we have concerns about what happens after.
May I?
Councilor Perkins.
Sorry, I say.
Come on.
Please, go on.
I was just, in fact, having a conversation about this very topic. I think it would be helpful to perhaps get a letter from AHAC to council talking about what happens when we do hit the 75 and what that means for projects. I think it's important for council to kind of be informed about that, and maybe that would help start the conversation and help us start more conversations with parks about the need.
And just so you're aware, we have received an application for those last 16. We just received it this week, so it'll be at our next AHAC meeting
Okay,
to
great.
be presented.
So for folks in the committee, is there anyone interested in drafting a letter or several interested in drafting a letter to council?
I
will
can be
endorse.
interested.
Okay, great. Anyone else like to help Mandy write it, or is it a one-woman show?
I don't know.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you can coordinate that with Rachel and staff. Great, thank you. Thank you, Councilor.
Chair question.
Yeah.
For Rachel. Just to clarify does this property already have a deed restriction on it for affordability, or
It
would this
does.
be the only?
It does, and
Okay.
or because this is a property that was
added to the UGB under House Bill 4079. And so with that came a requirement to have so many units at an affordable rate. And so there's a covenant on the land that these units be provided at 80% AMI.
Super. Thank you.
So just so I'm clear, but we only have 16 left and this is asking for
We only have 16 left for parks.
parks.
The city has an unlimited, there's no limit to the city's
Okay.
SDC exemptions for
Not out of
affordable
question,
housing
it's
development.
just that
Correct.
they didn't-
I will say the city's affordable housing SDC exemption goes up to 80% AMI for rents.
Yes.
Considering the expansion of our community's acknowledgement of the housing needs that move farther along the spectrum into the middle income, will we be having any conversations with parks about a role they might play in supporting middle income housing with SDC programs?
So the city is currently exploring SDC methodologies. And there was a work session at the last city council meeting that you might be interested in watching if you're concerned about SDC exemptions for anything above 80% AMI.
Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry to be virtual. This is Lynn McConnell. I have some germs in the household, so I decided to stay home. We can send out a link to that work session to the committee afterwards, if that works for folks, because that was a great topic, I thought.
Right. Thank you, Lynn. And as part of your presentation, I believe, I know you mentioned that this is the approving body for SDC exemptions.
It is, and so if there's any conflicts,
And
that would be
so
a good
I just want
time.
to underline that for the folks who are new to the committee. This is the, I think, only thing this committee does that is not then routed through council. So there is stricter criteria of just scrutiny for conflicts of interest. So just for practice, we'll go over this. We'll start at that end of the room with Tony. Are there any conflicts of interest you have with this particular SDC item on the agenda?
No.
Okay, great,
I do not.
great. No, none.
No.
Great. Thank you all very much. Thanks. If you'd like to.
I just noticed that the number in the motion is different than the total above it. Is
The
that
parks is
intentional?
removed because there, it's not.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
I follow you.
So it's for the four below, three below, not parks above. Do I have a
Cool.
motion?
I'll do one. I move to exempt Hayden Homes from pending City of Bend system development charges of $1,129,204.80 and to authorize staff to take all actions necessary to complete such exemptions, including signing loan agreements and related documents without further approval. If exemptions are not exercised before any expected increase, the increase will be added to the total exemption.
I second.
Thank you, Mandy. And no vote, show of hands or aye. Looks like that is also great. Thank you all. Appreciate everyone helping us stay on schedule. We've got some presentations that we want to leave as much time for as we can. And I believe that is what's next is presentations for the middle income housing pilot program. And Gary has words for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Sir Chair and committee members. For those who I have not met yet, my name is Carrie Bell and I'm the Affordable Housing Coordinator for Middle Income Housing. This afternoon, you will be hearing presentations for 4 separate applicants who applied for middle income housing pilot program funds. City Council had set aside $500,000 from the general fund to specifically address the housing crisis as it pertains to the lack of housing for middle income households. As the market rate no longer accommodates the middle income household, we recognize the continued strain on a large chunk of our workforce in Bend. These are our teachers, our nurses, and tech workers that cannot afford to live in the community in which they serve. In order to recruit and retain a strong workforce in our community, the city seeks to address the housing needs along the entire housing continuum, from the work that we do to bring shelter to the houseless to traditional affordable housing and the middle income affordability here, and even the market rate. Solving the housing crisis is about incentivizing unit production at every level. The goal with setting aside these funds was to bridge the gap in assistance between what HUD defined low-income affordable housing is and the market rate housing. In order to award the funds to incentivize development or preservation of housing for the middle-income household, this year council adopted resolution 3325, a resolution of the Bend City Council establishing the middle-income housing pilot program and process by which the city can award funds to projects providing housing units to middle-income households, specifically to help increase the supply of housing units affordable to households earning above 60% AMI and up to 120% AMI. The process by which we arrive here this afternoon included significant outreach and stakeholder input throughout this last spring and summer before we launched the application for funds. Specifically, we held a workshop with about 25 stakeholders who came together to discuss the barriers they face in making their market rate projects pencil for the middle income affordability. As barriers were discussed during the workshop, viable solutions brought forward generally fell within 5 main categories: down payment and closing cost assistance, assistance with infrastructure requirements, property improvements to existing housing, new build projects, and innovative construction solutions. You can expect this evening's or afternoon's applicant presentations to fall into one or more of these categories. The specific goals and criteria outlined within the resolution of which we provide are outlined in the resolution of which we provided you. These also can be found on AHAC's webpage within the City of Bend's website for public to access. The priorities of this pilot program can be found within the resolution and scoring criteria. Among them are the middle income qualification, of course, production as soon as possible, long-term impact, and replicability. By nature of this being a pilot program, the idea is that we can continue the work if made possible in the future. So with that, I hand this back to you, Sir Chair, to call up the presentations. Thank you.
First on the list, I've got Habitat. And we are tracking right on schedule, so I believe you'll have 5 minutes for a presentation, 5 minutes for questions from the committee. And as experienced presenters like yourselves know, 5 minutes goes like 2. So there will be a some sort of noise.
Some sort of alarm at 4 minutes.
At 4 minutes. And so at that point, you'll have a minute. And we have a little bit of time, but let's try to keep it concise as much as we can. Thank you.
I'm gonna try and pull up your presentation too.
That'd be great.
I'll wait to start the timer.
If you'd like to bring any other members of your party up, you're welcome to. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you all for the opportunity to present today. I'm Scott Nordquist, Director of Grants Management with Habitat for Humanity. With me, Sean McKeever, Architect and Design Director at Hiatus Homes. Next slide, please. A little background on Habitat. We have served 220 families with affordable home ownership. We have a well-established program to set homeowners up for long-term success. And on our capacity, we completed 22 homes in 2022. And we're currently under construction on 20 more homes in both Bend and Redmond, with all 20 families selected and working through our program. This photo is 12 homes under development in Southeast Bend. Next slide, please.
And about Hiatus Homes, we're a Central Oregon company. All of our people and projects live here in Bend. Each of our housing developments focuses on really 2 things: building performance and occupant well-being. And on each site, we strive to find simple, compact, and beautiful design solutions. Our company has a proven history of working creatively to demonstrate new code adoptions and help provide middle-income housing solutions in our community. Next slide.
So what we're proposing is very much a pilot partnership. It's a rare opportunity and much needed, as Carrie mentioned, for middle-income homeownership. So to do that, we're really leveraging the strengths of each of our organizations. So we have High Performance Home designed by Hiatus, and a qualified family from Habitat's homeownership program. Next slide, please.
On this conceptual site plan, and in the rendering you saw at the beginning of the title slide, we see a possible location of a 1-story, 2 to 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom, roughly 1,200 square foot house that's accessible from the new roundabout at Southeast Wilson and Southeast 15th Street. At this stage, the design, use air quotes here, is more of a feasibility study at this point, proving what can fit on the site within the setbacks. But our goal will be to balance the unique site design factors of this property with a solution that embodies the project's goals on this site and can be repeatable on other sites as well. Next slide, please. One of the primary goals for this partnership is to provide a home that embodies the principles of universal design to enhance livability and accommodate a diverse range of physical abilities and needs. We feel a successful outcome of this pilot partnership is to demonstrate an accessible, sustainable, and replicable home.
And this photo on the right here is current Habitat homeowners that needed some accessibility accommodations in their home. Habitat was able to build some accommodations for them. It's not something we do very often, and we would like to do it more and like to do it better. So this investment will help both our organizations better accommodate everyone in the community, and not just on this project, but future projects as well. Next slide, please. So a lot of folks are probably familiar with this, but it's important to understand why we don't see more middle income housing. The short answer is subsidies. So they vary, but if you look at the example on the left, there is about 200,000 in public funding available for a unit that's serving under 80% AMI. When you go to 81%, that pretty much disappears. Now at that middle income level, the mortgages are higher, but not nearly enough to cover the costs. So on the right, you see a snapshot of what we're proposing for this project. The city's investment will help cover that critical gap. So we can create opportunities for middle income homeownership. Next slide, please. Okay, finally, back to this beautiful rendering. So this is a possible home design of high performance home in a great neighborhood. And we really hope the city will invest in this pilot, in this partnership between Hiatus and Habitat for accessible middle income homeownership. Thank you.
Thank you both. Folks in the committee, what questions do you have?
As I understand it, Habitat typically builds homes for the under 80% AMI. Is that correct?
Correct.
What experience do you have building for the 80 to 120?
So we do it sometimes, we don't do it often. We have one home that we're building right now in Northeast Bend for a family that's over 80% AMI with land that we got through the affordable housing fee. So it's capped at 100. Again, it comes back to that slide of why it doesn't happen more often. Yeah. We do see clients that every time, so we do home ownership counseling year round, and we have people interested in our program and they are just over, they don't qualify, and we don't have anywhere to send them. And we would love to have more options available to say, yeah, you qualify. We have a different program. We have something else available.
So in addition to the sort of the plans that are being sort of piloted potentially in this in terms of what's in the house, what does the house look like? This would sort of represent a broadening of Habitat's scope into that 80 to 120.
Yeah, and this partnership will help us develop this home and these plans. And then, you know, depending on options, you can reproduce a home at different levels. Like you can cut costs in certain areas and make it pencil for different income levels. But we have approval from our board to do a certain amount of homes for middle income.
So you talk about like repeatable design, and I understand repeatable in general, but in this scenario, like what would repeatable look like? Like, would you leverage that design to people outside of Habitat? and hiatus? Would you be just using it internally? What does that look like?
I can dig it. We won't have it available publicly. We would both retain the plans and be able to repurpose that design. This rendering, you see, we have a garage that's required by the CCNRs in this neighborhood. But, just imagine you could eliminate that garage and this could be a cottage community of the same home design. So we have options to repurpose this design in a variety of ways. I know Hiatus also uses ADUs above garages that they could plug and play and start with this initial concept and then vary it into some future projects. So, and then the most important part is the universal design aspect for both of us will be beneficial as we try to plan and be able to incorporate that into reuse this design and then incorporate universal design into other projects down the road as well.
We heard from someone recently, a community member who spoke about how difficult it is to find housing for people with special accessibility needs. Is it possible to set this home aside for a family with those needs?
I'm gonna look at Rachel as my fair housing advisor. That I can't comment for sure on whether that's a possibility. That's challenging, and that's what that community member said. I believe. I think I was here for that meeting. Basically, it becomes available and it can't be reserved necessarily, if I remember correctly, and so it gets filled by someone who doesn't need it. Regardless, one of the things that we mentioned in this is that universal design benefits everyone. So we at Habitat see a ton of demand for aging in place. It's not just wheelchairs, it's broad needs. And so things like a flat door threshold, a wheelchair goes through it easier. It also is not a tripping hazard. So there are benefits that it's not just restricted to maybe someone in a wheelchair or who we typically think of as an accessible design, but aging in place, all kinds of different needs can be accommodated with universal design. And we know we have those needs in the community, so we would do what we could to try to fit the family that could really benefit from the home.
I get the opportunity to drive by the site every day, and I got to see the house that was there prior to, and then kind of the takeover of the roundabout in that lot a little bit. Can you speak to a little bit about how the accessibility to the driveway is going to go? Yeah, do you have a plan? Is it in the works? Is there difficulty there?
The city did not incorporate access because there was an existing home when they rebuilt the roundabout. So that's unfortunate. But we have been in touch with them, and the proposed plan that is in hiatus site design, the city gave us we could approve that. The challenge of development is that we don't get the official word until we submit for permits.
Confidence levels high though.
And we did, so Habitat has gone through a traffic safety analysis already with the city as part of that process.
Sweet.
And we have a preliminary, we feel good.
Yeah, I drive by it every day, and gosh, that's going to be a fun one.
And there's actually, well, we don't need to see it, but there are existing examples in the city. Purcell and Butler Market is a similar traffic volume and has a driveway in the roundabout with the exact access plan that we're proposing.
Thank you both. Well, you've got time for one more.
Okay. I like the idea, and when I first read universal design, I was sort of the idea that with getting this funding, that was going to mean this design would be available to more people in middle-income housing, and I'm learning more about that now. And I think some of it was answered in that this will be proprietary information for Habitat and Hiatus. It's not really going to benefit community as a whole in terms of the design itself, other than being able to have the design if they go through those two entities, right? I mean, I guess it's one unit versus some of these other projects where I'm just trying to compare. Why is this one unit? It's only one unit, but I guess I thought the design was going to be something that would be used over and over again for this level of income of families, but it will be just between the two of you.
I think both entities have the capacity to certainly leverage more of these designs throughout the community in the future,
Right.
as well as, just going through the design solution efforts and making, certainly there will be information available to the public at the end of this house via marketing, or how did this go? Maybe that's something as part of the end of this project that doesn't become secret, but the plans aren't publicly available.
Well, and the cost could be lower because you've done it already. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That's the time we've got. Appreciate it. And next up, Hayden Homes. While Rachel's doing magic, we're getting the timer going again, maybe one click lower volume. Thank you.
I saw it coming, school started.
I didn't see it coming. All right, go ahead.
Perfect. Good afternoon, Chair, Committee. My name is Jacob Clark with Hayden Homes. Luckily, this afternoon, you have a lot of great projects to choose from. So our project specifically, perfect, is a sewer line, so no renderings. You're welcome. But I did want to provide a layout of said sewer line. So right now we're looking at a parcel in the southeast bend. Well, before I get started, let me give you a little history to Hayden Homes. Our internal model is to give as you go. So we believe a rising tide floats all boats. Started in 1989. We've been in Central Oregon and have built throughout Oregon, Idaho, Washington, and Montana. We are a privately held builder in the Northwest. Contributed more than 5.6 billion to local economies, created 92,000 jobs since we were started in 1989. But one of the key aspects is the creation of First Story, a nonprofit, in 1998. So they've provided housing to over 110 families, I think, at this point, throughout our Northwest region, and a first step towards financial freedom. Hayden Homes has a proven reputation for tackling some unique projects. Most affordable housing projects are going to be unique. Access in a roundabout, for example. And so some of those projects recently in Central Oregon include sleeping pods at St. Vincent de Paul with a community building, or Veterans Village, or Oasis Village in Redmond, or SDC exemptions that you just approved for Parkside Place, that have very unique challenges associated with those projects. This site in particular is currently in the 49 to 51 total unit range with 20 affordable units. Affordable being middle housing, the CDBG funds associated allow, Rachel, correct me if I'm wrong, for 80 to 100% AMI. Affordable housing fund, thank you. So it's less restrictive, thank you for clarifying, than the CDBG funds associated. Integrated mixed income neighborhood, 50 units, additional ADU sites along the path of the sewer line. There are 41 tax lots along that path to bring sewer in from Broster House to Woodside Court. I say plus or minus because some of those have private pumps associated with it. So, and the idea behind our proposal is to develop the site in its entirety, but use the middle housing fund to assist in bringing that sewer line to the site. We are currently underway on construction drawings, hopefully by the end of this month. We'd like to utilize a variety of unique processes, after a few meetings with the city, we're looking at Senate Bill 458. So creating 13 parent lots at or below 10,000 square feet. And using that really for expediting the process. So this is an RL zone. It would require a zone change and comp plan amendment, all of which are public processes and take time. And so utilizing some creative entitling processes, we could bring this to the table a little quicker. There is an application that was submitted the same week I sent in our application for this one for septic to sewer program. About halfway down the sewer line, an application was submitted by a homeowner at the site. And so this funding, this is 2,500 linear feet of 8-inch sewer, just to give you a context. So this funding would go to leverage, I guess, both septic to sewer program and middle housing. Hayden Homes is uniquely qualified to tackle a project like this. This is a map of the last 90-day closings in Bend Redmond MSA. And you can see that Hayden Homes projects in green fall well within that 80 to 120% AMI. Just some examples of attached product, front load product, alley load product. If you've been in Central Oregon, you've probably seen some of our products around. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
I was looking to my right first. Committee questions?
I touched on one of mine was, what about the septic to sewer demand and everything here? And how is that can possibly assist? You got right at the end.
Perfect.
I think two questions. One, so just for clarity, is there already a deed restricted requirement to provide affordable housing on this, or would you be adding it with this funding?
There is already an existing
With the affordable housing
restriction
fee fund?
that runs with the Affordable Housing Fee Fund. It's
40% of the units or
40% of the units at 80 or 100, 80 to 100% below.
And the second question, if I remember right, in your application, you sort of had an option to actually build them yourselves, but also referred to other home builders. Is there a reason why you're not committing to building them?
We would like more people to build. We are happy to build them, but we would love to partner with Habitat, Core, First Story, any of these other nonprofits that would like to build as well. If it came down to everyone's capacity was maxed out, we would certainly jump in and construct them and likely still partner with the nonprofits to place the fan.
So, the dollars would be used to pay for much needed infrastructure with sewer. That's sort of needs to come before any other developments in that area. I understand that. It seems like there's a number of what ifs that come after that between actual middle income housing being made available. And, you know, Hayden speaks to this in the application, we need to find developers and what have you. How confident are you that those developers will be found and that the housing will get built? Because this seems pretty risky. You're asking for the full amount. And it's for the sewer piece, not the actual housing.
Right. Sewer is expensive, unfortunately. And so the risk is somewhat mitigated in that we are a very prolific home builder in the Northwest. So we would happily construct all 50 units and work with nonprofits to place the families. What we'd like to do in the pilot aspect is use this as an opportunity to get more COBA members involved who may want to be interested but don't know how to sort through the pile of paperwork to get involved. And so by reducing the lot costs, essentially, if awarded, we would reduce the lot costs of 20 lots by 25,000, accounting for the full 500,000. That goes directly to the gap that Habitat mentioned in their proposal, where it often comes from private funding of the nonprofits. So by being able to keep the land costs low, we're able to then supply that to the nonprofit and they can find a family between 80 to 100% AMI or below. Build those.
Follow up to that. So what you said, would the purchasers of these lots have to be COBA members? I'm a little confused. about
No,
that.
that's not
Okay.
a constraint. We did include a letter of support from COBA, basically speaking to the point that we would like to get more builders involved in the process. And I think a lot of COBA members want to give back. They want to show the community that they care. Just how to start and how to do it is a hindrance. So
So this would help facilitate that.
we would, yep, and we would provide, here's the process. Here's to date, how we, if that's aligning with a nonprofit or however that looks.
Thank you. Yes.
Two questions. One, you may have answered and I missed it. What is the length of time for the deed restriction?
So it's my understanding that according to the affordable housing fee that was put in place before Hayden Homes, it indicates that it's only at the initial purchase and sale. So there's not a timeline. I'm looking to you to correct me. There's not like a 50 or 40-year timeline associated, which in and of itself is helpful to nonprofits because they can meet the middle income housing. LIFT funding often fills that gap in subsidy. LIFT funding requires a 40-year minimum. If you want to not use LIFT funding, then you have to be able to, I guess, access outside of that 40-year. So the way the current documents read, it's at the initial sale. It has to be to 80 to 100% AMI. We're not opposed to filing a restrictive covenant that runs with the deed for X number of years. But we would like to keep the options open for partners to be able to get in and build the house.
And then my second question, what would the order of operations for building these 20 units be? Like, would they be the last thing built? Would it be combo? Like, what would that look like?
Well, to be honest, right now, we don't know. We know it's somewhere in the 49 to 51 units. We know we can fit 13 parent lots at 4 units on each parent lot in an RL zone. That gives us, I think, 51, 52. Looking to Matt to do the math on that, but it depends on a right-of-way vacation at Woodside and Country Club. So there are a lot of moving parts in that. Affordability on a parent lot allows it to reduce from 10,000 to 8,000 square foot parent lot. And so the site layout, as it was shown today, shows products we build currently and are comfortable building placed on site with actual setbacks that we know exist today. And so it's likely it would be integrated into the community. So one parent lot might have 2 affordable and 2 market rate as it goes. But the 458 in a new development is a new process, both for us and the city of Bend. And so a lot of these steps are, we're solving the problems as they come up.
Thank you. That's the time we've got. Appreciate it. All right, and hiatus.
And I'll just yell over if we need to do the next slide. Is that all right? Are we on? Give me a countdown. Okay, go. We have lots of information. Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. I'm Jesse Russell. I'm the CEO of Hiatus Homes. This is Ryan Andrews. He's our CFO. We're a Central Oregon-based company, and we've been building small footprint, dense, climate resilient houses in Bend for almost a decade now.
We are asking for grant funding for Hiatus Penn Apartments. This is Ben's first micro apartment development, and it's designed to meet Ben's need for missing middle housing that can be afforded by those around that median income level. So thank you for considering our project.
Quick
quick evolution of how we got here. So we were originally a tiny house on wheels builder at Sparks Lake there. So we started there. We just wanted to build 4 tiny houses on a lot, and that was not allowed at the time. So that started this long quest to try to do that. So around that same time, the city adopted the cottage cluster code, and we were the first ones to use that. And we built our hiatus Benham project, which was the first project we did, and that's 22 houses. Those are not on trailers, but they are on foundations. And then we were the first developers to use that code. From that time, House Bill 2001 was handed down by the state. They wanted more density, so we were on the stakeholders group that then came up with the micro apartment code. That was approved, and that's what led to us starting down next slide, next couple slides. Yeah, that's when we started designing this building, which is our micro apartment.
One more slide. Again, this will be the first micro apartment building to use that code. So we've been working on this project since we purchased the land in 2020. It was late 2020. We funded the project to date with about 35 investors local to Bend. One of the things that's really important to us is local investors funding local projects. So this is truly a locally funded project. We do own this land. So earlier this year, after our building permit was approved, we were ready to break ground. We discovered that the project was no longer feasible due to the inflation increases on building costs and labor, combined with the increase of interest rates, which has caused financing for construction to be really difficult. So we basically had 3 options. As a developer, we could abandon the project and not move forward at all. We could wait a couple of years or maybe several years for interest rates to come down and rental rates to go up, which would kind of create a new equilibrium where now the building pencils again, but at much higher rental rates. Or we could try to add additional units inside our existing footprint. And so we chose the latter, tried to move forward with this project by adding units to make it pencil.
And we were really fortunate in that the micro apartment code allows for a lot more density than a traditional apartment. So we were originally at 40 units where we had tuck under parking, which you can see in the left side of this slide. And we also had some stepped back decks, as you can see on the left side as well. We basically filled in those spaces and we were able to add 19 units to the project. So we went back with our design team. We showed some concepts to the city. We got kind of an initial nod that this might work. So we've modified our application and we're in for land use right now. Next slide. Just to show you a little bit, it's a bit of a different kind of apartment. So this is a lofted 1-bedroom. All the units are this unit here. There's no 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms. Really meant for a single or a couple. Oh, we should go really fast. Yeah. Okay. And the other really unique thing about this code in the building is these common areas. So we have 3 common areas on each of the floors. It's really meant for people to come together, Taco Tuesdays, remote workers, and that sort of thing. Next slide. Yeah, and here's the location.
So right in the Orchard District, right near the yacht club, walkable, focus on walkability and bikeability. So we can jump to the next one. We're requesting $293,312 in grant funding. What that does, that pays for the redesign costs and the building permit, which needs to be purchased in October. So the grant allows us to increase the units, move forward on the project, pay for that redesign, and pay for that building permit, without which our land use permit actually expires. And then we would have to start over from scratch, redesigning the building, which is a multi-year process. So this doesn't get built for a long time if basically we can't move forward now. So that's what we're asking for help with.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefits to this project. One, it shows a new building type that can be done. The other thing is it's really close to the Bend Central District. So we feel like, we're shovel ready. We'd like to start at just the end of this year. So in a year and a half or so, we would have this building up and running. And so, yeah, we think the project is going to be great and we hope that you'll help us with it. Thank you. 4 minutes and 45 seconds.
Thank you. That was a
Yeah.
lot of information.
It used to be 15 minutes long, so.
This is a lot. Go ahead.
I like this a lot. It's exciting. And it seems it's time relevant. 18 units would be deed restricted. Is that what I took from the?
Yeah, we've also applied for the MUFTI program, which is a tax abatement program. We were the first ones to apply for that. We kind of hit a roadblock when we got to Parks and Rec. And so the city is right now kind of redoing how that program is going to work. Parks just had a meeting, I think it was last week last week on this. And it looks like it's going in the right direction where we wouldn't have to have approval from each of the taxing districts. There'd be a certain amount that was left aside for tax abatement. And that'd be a 10-year tax abatement. So we would have, how many units?
It's 18 units,
now it's
30% of the units would be deed restricted for 10 years. One of the things we focus on here, so if we don't get MUFTI, we can't deed restrict the building. We have to let the rents float as market rents. However, what we're looking at right now, the apartments at the 120 AMI level is $1,999, basically $2,000 a month for an individual, $2,285 for a couple. Our pro forma rents are at that range on market. So we're trying to deliver what we call attainable by design by having smaller units, much higher density than has ever been seen in the city of Bend, frankly, before. We're trying to deliver units that are attainable by design that naturally fall in that middle income housing level. And so that's the goal, but the deed restriction would go along with MUFTI.
So it depends.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. What's currently on the lot?
Nothing. This lot's been vacant, so there was no displacement or anything.
You may have just answered this and I missed it. How did you come up with the rent rate to say that they're market rate middle income? Like that, the two of those together kind of don't fit for me, just based on like market rate in Bend is not middle income to me.
Right.
So
where does that term come from? So the 1-bedroom apartments around Bend, depending on where you go, are in that $1,800 to $2,200 a month range. The 120 AMI is basically at the top of that range. So 120 AMI for an individual is $2,000 a month, $2,285 for a couple. So in Bend, it's harder for a family to hit the AMI numbers than like an individual or a couple. Just the way those AMI prescriptions come out. What we did is we went and looked at what is for rent around town in all kinds of different buildings. And so our units are smaller than almost everything that's out there. So we're trying to hit a little bit lower rent, but also appeal to a smaller household size. So one of the things we see in Bend and all across the country is developers have for 50 or 75 years been incentivized to build larger units. Everything's about square footage, net rentable square footage. What we've found with, kind of the last 15 years, and certainly this is true in Bend, the biggest demand is for smaller households. So an individual in their 30s would rather live alone in a 1-bedroom or a studio typically than have a roommate or 2 roommates in a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment or home. And so there's more demand for 1-bedrooms than anything else. So we're trying to supply as many 1-bedrooms as we can to the market. We call these open 1-bedrooms. There's a lot of price pressure on this. It might be those rental rates for 1-bedrooms around town might be $2,400 in 2 years. We don't know, but we tried to create units again at a cost where we can build and deliver these units at the market at or really close to what is affordable at the top end of middle income. And so that's why we're, it's kind of this crossover. We're trying to meet this attainable by design. So
Question?
Well, I think you mentioned that you would accept a deed restriction if there was property tax exemption, and I get that because you're saving costs, right, operating costs. Would you accept a deed restriction with this funding, or is that not part of it?
no, not formally in that the deed restriction, the deed restriction, essentially, we're hoping those two would go together. We're hoping we'd have them up to approval
Right.
already.
No, and I
That's
get
gotten
that.
pushed 3 months.
Because my concern is you build it, you operate it for a year, it stabilizes, and then you sell it to someone else. There's no way, you're saying they're market affordable now, but there's no way to control that, right, going forward, if you were to unload it to somebody.
Yeah, and that's true, but that's part of the micro apartment code in my mind, is that it's if you look at a 1-bedroom with parking in a garage and that sort of thing, we don't have that. So we think that the smaller unit will naturally stay at a lower cost. And hopefully this will be an example to other developers, and we'll start to have more of this type. But yeah, we can't deed restrict it and still go forward with our financing in place. And so that's why the MUFD program works really well for us, because it will naturally deed restrict those units. But we can't sit here today and tell you 100% that the MUFD program will work for us, unfortunately.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all. That's all the time we've got.
Thanks very much.
Good presentation.
Yeah.
And neighbor impact. Other folks, we're going to timer go off in about 4 minutes, and that gives you another minute or so to wrap up.
We've been watching the first several, so we got it.
Yeah. All right. And do you have a slide presentation?
We do not. We're going old school here.
Great. Go ahead.
So thank you, Chair and committee members. My name is Andrew Spreadborough, Deputy Director at Neighbor Impact, and I oversee our community development programs. I'm joined by John Cox, who's our Director of Lending, and really want to thank you for the opportunity here to kind of chat about our project. I wanted to start by providing a little bit of information about Neighbor Impact. I'm guessing most of you are somewhat familiar with us, but we're a regional nonprofit organization. We serve Crook, Deschutes, Jefferson counties, and the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. Within our common thread across our organization is we do work that supports low and moderate income populations and struggling populations, and we've got a pretty wide variety of different programs and services. One of which is our lending program, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And we have 2 lending programs we operate. The first is a housing rehabilitation program, which is low interest deferred loans for owner occupied homes to do repairs, health and safety improvements, those sorts of things. We also operate a down payment assistance program, and that's the project we're bringing to you today related to our application. Both of these programs are revolving loan funds, meaning once they pay off, we relend them and continue to relend the capital over time. These originally were capitalized primarily by grants going back to the 90s, community development block grant funded primarily going back to the old days. We've got a portfolio of about $5.2 million on loan between our rehab program and our down payment assistance. It's the value of the loans we have on the books. So we applied for some additional down payment assistance for a Bend specific project. That's what we're proposing. There are 2 goals really around this application. Incidentally, as per our materials, we're requesting $200,000 to do 5 down payment assistance projects. The 2 goals are the first, to help make home ownership reality for middle income first time home buyers. The intent is to remove barriers to home purchase through offsetting costs of down payment for home purchases.
But the second goal is really around increasing the supply of affordable housing for the middle income community. And, as we talk about low and moderate income housing and middle income housing, we're talking about subsidies, and most of the projects that we talk about, the subsidy goes to the developer. This is really around a buyer side subsidy, where we're providing the subsidy to the purchaser so that they can afford that home. And so in this case, the intent is to provide that long-term, affordable, sustainable home ownership opportunity for borrowers. How it works, the DPA program provides funding to pay for some or all of the down payment or closing costs for a home purchase. It's structured as a low interest loan, typically a second loan funded by Neighbor Impact behind a first mortgage loan that's provided by a bank or financial institution. Again, it operates as a revolving loan fund. So we're talking in our application about 5 households, but as those funds revolve, there's a longer term kind of benefit to the community over time. Additional advantages to the down payment assistance program: interest rates are below market value. This is a grant funded program, so we don't have the value of money so we could make those interest rates much lower than a market rate for a second loan. Also, the borrowers who access the down payment assistance funding are not required to purchase mortgage insurance, which saves a significant amount of monthly cost for borrowers and makes things more affordable. The current status of the program, we're really limited on funding. We've got a lot out on the books. We don't have any available currently for new applicants, which is why we're coming to you. We really are emphasizing trying to increase the capital available for this program. There were a few questions that were sent. I don't have time to address all of them. I'll try to just note a couple things. One, there may have been confusion in the application around any partnerships with housing developers. We don't. We're working directly with banks and lenders. So this is the first mortgages are from private providers, and it's a kind of a market-driven program. In terms of the dollar amount, we're proposing a $40,000 loan per project. We recognize that home prices in Bend are very high, and that may not be enough to fully fund a 20% down payment on a house in Bend. I mean, we can all do the math really quickly there, but wanted to stress that there are other resources available offered to these borrowers. Neighbor Impact has our resources as well. Our intent in building this application was to kind of balance the reality of cost with trying to make an impact in the region. And we feel like we can kind of package this with other funding sources to make these projects viable. Be happy to go into that in more detail. With that, I'm guessing my time is running out, so I guess we'll field any questions if you have any.
Question there.
I'll wait.
Yeah.
I'll wait.
All right.
So you mentioned you are low on funds right now to support people. Is that specifically for middle income, or is it low income and?
It's across the board.
Okay.
It's our rehab program. I mean, part of the challenge is on these down payment assistance loans, we're not seeing the usual repayment right now. With our current interest rate environment, home sales are down. You guys know the story. So there's just not a lot of that churning and payoffs of loans. So we have got a lot in the books, but they're just kind of sitting there right now. And we're pursuing funds. We're always applying for grants to try to recapitalize. But yeah, currently we don't have anything really. Now payments could come in at any time and allow us to continue to operate the program. But
And second question, do you already have like that are waiting for this?
This is not a program where we can generate much of a waiting list, because these purchases are usually real-time opportunities and folks can't kind of sit and wait. So I know we don't have a wait list per se, but John, how would you answer that?
No, I mean, we have a giant wait list for our preservation program currently, upwards of 70 plus people on it. We've been addressing all the dry well issues over the last 2.5, 3 years, and help get out through the county all the funding for the wells. And again, that's run dry, no pun intended. But honestly, the first time home buyer demand is almost a daily occurrence where these local brokers, anyone who's familiar with neighbor impact utilizes this to really benefit their clients and getting them into their first homes. And we have a full, through our home source department, we have the whole counseling workshop that they could take. We have the one-on-one HUD counseling session they're required to take at the end of their workshop. So they are prepared for what they're getting into. Going from a rental into a house can be a big change. So it benefits these people, and it's a great product. And really, would you rather be paying $140 for mortgage insurance every month that's going to nothing, or would you like to be building equity in your home faster and not having that albatross of PMI around you and not enabling you to refinance maybe 5 years down the road if the market just doesn't explode like it did in previous years? So it's been a real successful program, so much so that we get money in, it's out. I got a payoff yesterday and it's already committed today. That's how fast and how on the cuff we roll, because it's like Andrew said, a fluid kind of process here. And these people are buying, they're going into contract. I will not reserve funds for anyone unless I see a signed contract. So that's when the ball starts. And then it goes to our committee and we make recommendations, and then our loan committee approves these on a monthly basis. So we can't establish a wait list simply because it comes and goes too quickly, and we really have to work, yeah.
So just walk me through how this doesn't affect their first lender's performance. I mean, if they're borrowing money to pay the down payment, that's typically not allowed by a first lender. Or they increase the rate because of that, or I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how this.
So how those are
it
packaged together.
works.
So John.
Okay,
go ahead.
because it's a lower
Mhm.
interest rate, because it takes the PMI out of it. I mean,
Yeah, so I'd say, to keep it simple, one of our biggest players is the Oregon bond. Okay, and they even have subsidies built into that program that even adds even more down payment or closing cost assistance in a credit back scenario at closing. Okay, if Oregon bond allows us to come in as a private second and cover that full 20%, which will then wipe out their obligation to have to enforce mortgage insurance on their buyer. So as long as it pencils out, and as long as the qualifying ratios, meaning how much do they make to how much do they owe for a house payment, on top of that, how much do they owe on the back end, all revolving debt, car payments, you name it, that all has to come together. So I work very closely with brokers who I guide them almost to the broker first. First thing you do, pick up the phone, call, Helen at Loan. Well, I won't go into any names, but and figure out what can you afford. And then based on that, we move forward. And then between the broker and Neighbor Impact, we figure out their structure that works. And it's very successful, and it gets very creative at times, but it works. And we get these people in, and it wouldn't happen if we weren't there. So
But you can't connect these to a standard mortgage, a 30-year private lender. You can have the down payment
you can,
assistance in conjunction with it.
yeah. So
That's
it's,
my
we have, no, we haven't run into any issues.
The
on that.
value threshold of a
Right.
lot of loans where you can, in some cases, even exceed 100% of the home's purchase price or value with a second mortgage, depending on the terms of it. The first mortgage rate is not impacted by it. It's just. as
Their
long as the
risk
second
is less
mortgage- yeah.
because we're taking on the risk. That, in
Right.
other words, some lead
Right,
lenders
right.
would be lending up to 95, and maybe the people are coming in with 5. They're required to carry PMI if that's the case. But look at that lender. He's got his neck out to 85, 95% of the loan.
Right.
And
there's-
here we're
there's-
cutting it back. So they're pleased to see us come in.
It works if the second mortgage repayment monthly amount is less than the PMI.
And they're getting, and the reason for you doing this program, doing for a while, is because you're able to provide a lower than market rate second.
Yeah, as an example, we're set at 6.5% right now, which is very favorable.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I just have one. You mentioned in your app, you've done 32 down payment assistance loans since the pandemic, I think. Could you talk about how many of those are actually in Bend? Because obviously this money.
Yeah, not many. I think 5 or less were in Bend. I mean, yeah. The function of affordable housing is often it's outside of Bend, and that's where a lot of our demand is. So the Bend projects that we have done have been higher cost than our standard amount.
Hence the higher request per transaction.
And we've also really pushed, even through like OHCS, is that 100% isn't going to get us anywhere. We need to raise this minimum to 120% of area median income. And they finally took note about a year and a half ago, and those restrictions are expanding in our favor. We really need that here. And so our program, we've approved a change, and it's now we go up to 120% area median to fit that. Otherwise, no one would qualify in Bend if they pencil out.
All right, any other questions?
So the 40,000, obviously will make a big dent in down payment costs. You mentioned other funding sources. Can you talk with us a little bit more? Because that seems, and then we will need those.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. and John can correct me if I. So often our borrowers bring their own cash into a project. Obviously, it's not always 100% of the down payment coming from neighbor impact. John mentioned the Oregon bond has some offsets for closing cost credits and other incentives that we kind of package together. Third Neighbor Impact has an existing program, so we anticipate, if there are higher cost projects, we may have to bring in some of our other revolved funds in as they become available just to make these deals work. Again, the intent here was really to try to propose a number of loans that we thought would be significant. And so that's why we wanted to keep the per project cost as low as we could, but remain viable. But if we see those costs creeping up, we're committed to finding the resources to make them work and getting the 5 projects done.
Prior funding through OHCS would limit $15,000 of their support per loan. So I'd take that 15,000, pull another 30, 40,000 from my revolving loan fund and fund the 20% loan. It's kind of what I plan to do with this. Same idea.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
You all completed scores. You've seen each other's scores and scores averages. However, you haven't heard the presentations before scoring. And so scoring today is just going to be a piece of how you make your decision. The presentations certainly add to that. So don't necessarily make your decision based on the scoring that you've done, because you've heard a lot today and learned a lot more about the proposals than what you had before you scored. So that's all that I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we start to, maybe for Rachel, maybe for Carrie, but I just want to make sure that what constraints or what assurances do we have as part of loaning these funds that they'll be used for the projects they're set? I mean, without deed restrictions, there's the reporting and everything else, but is there
They
something?
enter into an agreement with the city.
There's the city, okay. Gotcha.
Or
I want to make sure because these are new funds and a new program that we have out to see.
and it is not a loan, it is a grant.
It's a grant. Thank you.
Is there a time limitation by which the funds must be used?
Probably speak into the microphone, so it's reminding me. It is a grant, not a loan, and they were into an agreement with the city
Is there a time constraint by which the funds must be used
within the year.
within the year? Okay. Any other questions? We launch into numbers.
I did.
Oh, how about that?
Let me bring that up.
So I'm
Those
curious,
predictable questions.
knowing that the funds must be spent within a year. Do we have any projects that, based on the information that we have, those dollars potentially would not be spent within a year? I don't think so. It is a great question for it. Yeah. I mean, I think we can refer to
It
that.
seemed from the applications that it seemed to me that would be very likely for all the ones we looked at. or at least possible. It could be done.
Some more clearly than others, I think.
And I think the key is they need to be obligated within a year, so not necessarily spent, yeah.
We have 500,000. Is that the full amount?
Wait, in the spreadsheet or
Yep, I'm
We are.
doing it, sorry.
Well, please do start talking.
Start
And
talking.
both of those are good.
Of these 4 projects, I feel like neighbor impact might be the most reasonable one to, that would lowest risk, maybe I would say, of the projects with good impact. Just one comment.
Other comments while we're here?
Got comments.
Mm-hmm.
Always have comments. I've been fortunate enough to sit kind of on some of these open house and listen to some of the roadblocks and issues and uncertainty as to what these funds could actually be used for. And it was kind of a general consensus within this kind of subgroup talking was that this was just going to be like, let's see what's out there, right? Let's see what kind of middle housing hurdles there are. Let's see what kind of projects we can entertain with these funds, because generally speaking, a lot of the affordable funds are restricted to a much lower AMI. And this missing middle is underfunded. And let's see if we can then spiral some of these asks and fundings into also not only proving the need and hopefully getting some support from the city of Bend in the future to make this almost a recurring fund rather than just a one-time. But also maybe influence some other developers and projects into turning some of their development projects into looking more middle income because they do have the city support. So, you know, I looked at this almost just like a lot of these are kind of new and cool, and they maybe don't necessarily like show that it's tons of units on the ground right away with money. But what it is, it's creative solutions for interesting problems that don't previously have funding solutions. There's my comment.
I'm regarding the hiatus on Penn. I have some reservations with them not having a deed restriction. If they had the MUFG funding and there was a deed restriction, I think I would have less reservation, but I do have reservations about that because it just could quite easily just go to market housing like market rate. More expensive very quickly if the current trend in rental prices continue.
We have a tentative timeline as to when MUFG will be approved, if approved.
They were saying by the end of the year.
End of the year, possibly. So 2 years.
It's already-
Yeah, okay.
And that's part of the reason I was asking about the agreement that we have in place. I mean, if we can't get promise, then we have some other.
We can always put covenants, right? Where it's like, we'll issue this much and if MUFG is awarded and if not, then it rolls over to here, if and then statements. We're good at those, right, Rachel?
Is that a contingency?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
I know,
concerned
it's
about
not
that,
ideal.
though. I don't want that to, not that it would, but it puts pressure to award it.
Totally.
I'm concerned as well. I love the design concept. I'm really excited about it. I just, I'm not a developer, but I also have concerns that the design itself will drive sustained affordability. I mean, let's be real. I mean, this is a market where we don't have enough housing, regardless of whether it's studio, lofts, what have you, and those prices are just gonna shoot right up. And we're starting at a price point that I think is tough and already at the verge of being outside of that limit. So without the deed restriction, it's hard for me to see how that's gonna work.
I have some of the same concerns, just it being at the top of sort of what's already available, top price for what's already available for studios and 1 bedrooms. The fact that they can't house families. You know, I don't think those funds are gonna change anything.
Oh, see, I like this one a lot, just because it's for a number of reasons, but also being the first example of the micro apartment code, utilizing some funds to benefit a large number of units if they are truly going to be rented at the middle income rate. And I'd like to see a way that we could look at that and ensure it. I also like the fact that there's so many other local investors and that sort of thing. And I think it's a high number of, you know, versus some of the other options and other options we're seeing here. I think it kind of goes towards middle income housing in a big way, but that's my gut. They're all different. And I know how we like to try to parse it out, and I'd be interested in some of those conversations. Well, I'll stop at that, but I don't want to dismiss it just because of that. If we could be creative in how we could award funds. And I feel like in terms of timing, this one is the piece that this helps it move forward or stay, you know, go dead in the water for a while. The others are not that time. I mean, other than not quite the same time constraint.
I guess my comment in line with that, I mean, I do have to me, it feels like the most innovative, right? In terms of approach. I guess, is there a way to dedicate some of the funding toward that? Or is that like, you know, not an option if you got not your full ask?
I believe that was covered in the
Yeah.
application.
Because then we could sort of experiment with whether or not it actually works, but we wouldn't be taking such a gamble, I guess.
The most pressing time thing is a building permit.
Right. Which I think was 131. Was part of
Yeah,
yours.
we broke this into 2 chunks in the RFI, 161 and 30.
And sadly, the other comment I have is just that it's sad that virtually all of them feel like they need additional subsidies from somewhere else in order to make it work.
Oh, yeah.
So we're stacking subsidies.
Some of them, yeah. I mean, I like the Habitat hiatus partnership because there really isn't a ton of subsidy to build that. I mean, I know it's 1 unit, but it's a unique scenario. It's a great partnership. I mean, if they get a family placed and they're looking for down payment assistance, they can bring in neighbor impact. Briefer. Potentially.
It is a really difficult lot to build, and I live right by it, and I have been wondering what that would even possibly look like.
But you guys have been doing this for so much longer than me. What confidence do you have that Habitat Hiatus will like use that design? Like, how many more of those buildings do you think will, like, based on your experience on this committee, will be built in the next 5 years?
Well, I mean, I can speak to what like Habitat's commitment to Bend and Redmond has been publicly, that it's 20+ homes in the Bend Redmond area.
In middle income.
In middle income? No, I mean, it's just that, affordable homes.
Yeah.
But they said they could change the design
Yeah.
to where like.
So
could
it
be
feels
leveraged to either.
likely to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my big, like, I don't know how to even ask that really.
And hiatus builds like gangbusters. so.
Right.
I'd say architecturally, the intellectual property around that design is that it is theirs to use. It's not a public commodity,
Sure.
but they have a track record of reusing designs that they have or modifying them to create kit of parts.
Yeah.
And so I'd say I would think because of my day job as an architect, I think it's pretty likely that they would use either that or pieces of it consistently.
Yeah, that makes less, because it's hard for me like to think about, okay, so 59 units and 1 unit is like such a different impact. But then if I think about, okay, so it's really not just 1 unit impact with Habitat.
Well, and I believe the architectural design component of that one was only $10,000 application. So it was a pretty minor amount.
Yeah,
for that.
absolutely. Good point.
And it's also designed for middle income, but I mean, it is a newer design.
Yeah.
So to speak,
Yeah.
that can be, that can be changed on line items and specs and. everything.
All right.
And I really like the idea of having more accessible housing being built for middle and lower income.
And family.
Yeah,
me too.
yeah.
Me too.
So my next question is, would you like me to start plugging in some numbers?
I was just, yeah. My veins are itching. I need numbers.
Other than Matt, that would like to start volunteering numbers, because we know Matt will.
No, I mean, it's not a scientific approach, but it's a starting point.
Well, we always like to have a starting.
Yeah, but does anybody have any other strong feelings or questions that they want to share? I kind of like that before we get Matt's numbers and then we are on the fence, but.
No, it's
Touch on
fair.
maybe, like, or like the sewage thing. So maybe
Right.
we should have that.
At the meeting we had on 15th Street in Butler Market, this was kind of like one of a, what if there was something that was holding up some middle income that was infrastructure that these funds could use for and be used for. And Hayden Homes was like, as a matter of fact, there is. And was talking about some of these things. So it's a really cool scenario that funding could help solve, where I think that there would be some collateral benefit as well by virtue of, the city investing tons of money over the last couple of years with this sewer project. And now they want to have people kind of tie into it that are in septic, but the costs of that are so darn expensive that there's just this roadblock where it could start incentivizing some of these people to tap into it, rather than having septic. I think it's kind of fun.
I also like that they're trying to incorporate different developers within that project to broaden our base of people who are building middle or affordable.
I, of course, would love to see the number of units discussed in the application. I am concerned about all things that could go wrong after we award funding and then, the project gets delayed and there's no developer, there doesn't pencil, all the things that could go wrong with this. And then we've spent this money and at the end of the day, there's no housing. I'm sort of curious, would it be appropriate to ask Hayden to commit to being the developer in the absence of other willing developers for this, so that we know that we've got someone who's committed to putting up those houses?
I think we got that verbal assurance. He's
We did,
getting the
yeah.
nod here.
Absolutely. We've had First Story,
Yeah.
and I'm happy and willing to build all 20 of the units. But we would like to be able to share it. But we're certainly on board with it.
That could certainly be in the scope of the agreement
Okay.
for the funds.
I feel better about it, although I'm still concerned, but I feel better about if we have some commitment in that agreement, that they will step up and do that if we don't get the collaborative development that I think you're intending to get.
These are still far in time.
Yeah, 2 years, right?
So that's my other thought about that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm still concerned about
How long has this project been on the table for affordable housing development before even Hayden stepped in though?
Since 2016.
Yeah.
We awarded it funding in 2016.
This one's actually getting movement now.
So it's a catalyst to actually do what was originally intended.
Hayden stepped in and
Potentially.
took over.
My concern with that one is just, I did some quick math and I think you need like at least 33% more subsidy to actually be able to sell those homes at an affordable price at some point in the future. So we're counting on there being, again, we're counting on there being additional subsidies at some point. And they will need to be pretty substantial unless Hayden's willing to do it, for nothing.
Yeah, it depends on the affordable developer, right? Are they gonna go after lift funds for development?
Correct.
Are they gonna go after asking for affordable housing funds for down payment assistance or CDBG for DPAs? The partnerships in the past, and then Earth Story is it's built out of their own pocket. They've done it.
Right.
And, they have land where they've brought in partnerships and people are interested in partnering with them. The Bear Creek big lot. Housing Works that was looking at 5 acres of that, I believe. So, the partnership's there. Just, you're correct. Some of it may require more money depending on who's gonna do it.
Yeah.
Well, and on these lots, 20 are already deed restricted to 80 to 20, so that prohibits, those are not going to serve the middle income, right? Am I missing something?
Well, that
here?
is the middle.
That is the middle.
Okay, 80 to.
80 to 100 is the
I had
middle.
80 to 100.
Yeah,
80
that's
to
still
100.
middle. It's
Yeah.
just also middle and eligible for affordable housing funds.
The deed restriction has been is in place.
There's,
It's just the sewer project that's standing in the way of
right,
moving forward.
correct.
Yeah, you got number?
I have some, you have some too, right, Ian? Okay.
So I'll start. So the numbers I came up with were really based on my feelings, which I haven't set that because I think the committee's echoed what I was already feeling. I felt that I wanted to support the Habitat Hiatus Partnership to their full ask. And the
Sorry. Let's not go tab. There you go.
and I felt that the Neighbor Impact Fund had over time, certainly the largest number of families and kinds of units served. So I thought of supporting them at their full ask of 200. And knowing the roadblock on the Penn Avenue project was the building permit expiration, funding that to the amount of that building permit, which is I think 1315. Roughly. And then the balance to have is about 93,500 for Woodside Sewer. And for me, the reason I started there was the two in the scoring and in the presentations. I felt that the two that were the most certain, that we knew were gonna have the most impact. One for a new project type and one for a lot of families served. We supported in full, and then the others we would try to move beyond sort of whatever that next roadblock was.
I have a comment. Yeah. I kind of disagree on the neighbor impact amount because when you say number of families served, these are 30-year loans, right? They don't have funds right now because they haven't been repaid for it. And so I wasn't thinking that I would want to fully fund that. I do want to help. And maybe to the tune of 120, which would be 3, was something I was thinking of. I don't see how that really, in my mind, it's still a loan from Neighbor Impact. It's still creating an obligation for someone to get into a home that might not otherwise be able to, but there's already a secondary market for that. I just don't know what if using that much of these funds is gonna have this big a bang. You know what I mean? Because we're just promoting a bigger loan for somebody versus helping build a product that has a lower price. You see what I'm saying?
I agree.
Yeah, but it's also like those loans could also, am I right, be used for either the Hayden project or the Habitat Hiatus project. So it's like those funds could potentially be in the same pool as a capital stack, right?
Right.
So it's, I guess that's the interesting piece, right? So essentially you could have two of the projects could be helping each other.
Well, people wouldn't need that second loan if the product is cheaper to begin with. I guess I like the idea of spending this 500 towards getting the project development off the ground, making these projects happen so that they exist for the multiple people that could qualify to be able to purchase it. and there's a secondary market of secondary loans already in place. I don't know. I didn't feel that strongly about neighbor impact myself because I just don't see it as impactful, but that's just me.
Speaking from a lending standpoint, in the middle housing, the 80 to 120 market, there really is no down payment assistance available.
Okay.
If
It does
it-
screw that.
It's 80% to 80 AMI and below is where all the down payment assistance is held.
Okay.
That 80 to 120 is really missing from these scenarios. So, as far as down payment assistance goes, if somebody were to go in and want to buy a middle housing unit, you know, let's call it the Habitat Hiatus project or a Hayden home, that down payment assistance would really be missing. To where we would have to then, if they needed down payment assistance, we'd have another ask. So it's expediting that ask essentially, assuming that these funds would be used for one of these projects. So, but I mean, at the 80% and below AMI projects that I've worked on, all of them have down payment assistance. All of them. So there's always an ask there, yeah,
Wow.
in one way or another.
See, I want to build things that are cheaper, so we don't need that.
Right, you know, you've got labor, you've got material costs.
Yeah.
Those
Oh, I know.
things are what they are. And it, you know, it costs this much to build the house. Unfortunately, it can't be sold for that much because then in order for somebody to qualify for that, they wouldn't be 80% or 120% AMI or below.
And it's not a one-time usage, if I
Right.
understand it correctly, like the funds will come back and help another family when that loan gets paid off, and maybe it'll be 30 years, but maybe it'll be 5. We don't know.
It's been so far it's been.
Yeah, it would be great to
Yeah,
build
no, we can take
houses that
that.
are less expensive. I mean, that's ultimately what we want to do.
Right.
It's just not the reality we're in, unfortunately.
Okay, well, so maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, I mean,
I hear you.
I follow you though, on
Yeah.
your numbers, like I was like in the, 120 to neighbor impact and then bumping up Hayden 80,000. But I had exactly the same numbers for the other two as you.
I'm still reluctant on the hiatus on Penn. Without some kind of deed restriction, I really struggle to want to fund that, knowing that it doesn't sound like a lot maybe to have like $1,900 as rent for a studio, but it's a lot. It's not. And so for that to be the lowest they could go at the high end of this middle income, it doesn't sit well with me. And I would be comfortable with going down on neighbor impact and putting more to Hayden Homes. But I'm reluctant on the hiatus on Penn.
All banking on that MUPT coming through,
I
right?
know.
I mean, this is largely, I really like this project. I really hope MUPT funding is available, but without it, it's market rate housing.
Yep.
From my layperson's understanding.
Well, but can we incorporate that into the agreement?
So if we did, my expectation is that that would impact the agreements they have with their already standing commitments for funding. And I doubt we get the first position on that.
True. Did you have something, Tony?
Mhm.
Okay.
I was just thinking, sorry.
I played with the numbers as proposed, but
Okay.
I can always change things. I just wanted you all to see what that would look like.
The question that we often ask in these with funding applications is, would Habitat be able to build this house without this funding? They said no.
In the application. Okay. Is Hayden gonna be able to move forward with this project without the entire? Yes. Without the full funding on Hayden's ask. Will this move forward?
The funding would directly correlate to the lot cost we'd be able to.
That's how much it would be reduced.
Further incentivizing potential partnerships.
Right.
Folks who haven't chimed in yet. Thoughts, opinions? Which numbers would you like to see move in which direction?
I think I'm kind of hung up on these too. Honestly, I think it looks really cool. I would like to live there. But to put money into something that costs that much per month
And we're shying away from contingencies,
We don't have to.
Well, usually our
what
contingencies are not like, give us back money. It's
No.
usually like, we have extra money.
Well,
and
what if,
We're gonna put it over there.
right, but what if hypothetically, we put a contingency in on hiatus? Where if they don't receive MUPD or hear back, did you say by the end of the year or within a 12-month period that we need to have these out? Okay, in a year, that if they don't receive MUPD,
I think the problem is they need the permit.
They need the money.
oh, you need a permit paid first before.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was put in the application. Yeah, okay, good thought. Yes, yeah, it doesn't work. Never mind. Right, we don't have one.
It all the funds isn't that much. How long is the deed restriction on Woodside Court for the housing, the affordable housing? Was it just 10 years? 20 years?
Maybe we should ask that.
From 2015 or 16, you said.
I'm gonna have to look up the trust deed to check that out, but
With partnerships, if those partnerships utilize additional subsidies, there may be
Right.
perpetual subsidies.
20
like
houses
lift
that are
funds.
deed restricted, part of it, right there, right?
So if lift funds are used, if they partner with somebody who uses lift
Right.
funds to construct, then there's a perpetual affordability
It is.
restriction.
Right.
But you said that too, we
30 years.
we consider extending that or
I
something.
think we've got an answer back here. Yeah.
So it's under document number 2016-512 is my understanding, but right now, the affordable housing fee funds are only restricted at initial sale. There's not a running fee with it. But like you mentioned, if a partner did something lift funding, they have.
Right.
or if a partner obtained SDC exemptions, those would have.
Well, how do we feel about that?
Other ways to get your hooks in.
It would be difficult for us with this grant to effectuate that.
Right. But they haven't been initially sold either. So there is that at initial sale, there is going to be some affordability code in there, right? But if that family then turned around and flipped it in 2 years to avoid capital gains,
Or if that LLC that bought it, I mean, one transfer is easy to get around. So I don't,
or an LLC can't purchase at 100% AMI or below.
that's true, but the second, yeah, that's true.
So it would have to go to an affordable family at first, right? It's, well, but the
Just the
affordable,
first
if affordable housing funds are the only utilized subsidy to purchase, it would be that initial sale. Right, but if the family then turned around and flipped it, they could flip it at market rate, assuming this was the only affordable subsidy. But if that lot was then sold to a partner who used additional subsidy, then that affordability period would be extended depending on the subsidy. The most common subsidy right now that I'm seeing is lift funds, which put a affordability restriction perpetuity.
But couldn't we put an additional restriction on it with this funding?
It's not a requirement of this funding.
Can be done, but it's not a requirement. Just a brief point of order. We do have several other items that we would like to get through today. So just to, we could either run a little over, and I don't know if the committee's up for that, or we can push some things to another session. But I appreciate the discussion. It's probably the most robust funding discussion we've had in a long time. It's great. How are we feeling about going along or pushing things to next month?
Longer in vote for pushing things that can be pushed.
I have a 5-10 hard stop.
Okay. So I think we can move the equity and accessibility scoring criteria to next month. All right, great. Well, let's see if we can get through this today, because that is of the essence for a number of these. Got to get all the way through this conversation today.
I'm confident in the Haven Homes that there's gonna be some additional affordability funds being used, which will continue the affordability period regardless. I mean, it's the demand's there. The willingness to build is there, and Bend and Central Oregon in general have enough affordable developers to get it going. I really think that's a low risk, in my humble opinion.
You're saying that because these developments will require further subsidies, which
Yeah.
will, you know,
They're gonna use lit funds
Yeah.
to build.
you can't get out of the deed, yeah. Correct.
I mean, it's, you know, how many times over the past several years have we had a affordable developer come to us and say, I want to buy a piece of land and I need to, you know, additional funding to buy it.
So of the numbers that are up there, what would you suggest moving?
I like it as is, but that's just me rolling the dice on Mufti coming through.
I do too.
So I'm looking at the hiatus application and their number for building permit fee is 1310. Not 1315, so. I have my-
Where do you want to put
Yeah,
the
I mean,
extra 500?
Oh, no, oh.
Well, if the money doesn't come through, I mean, what else can we do to get assurance there? I mean,
Well, I mean,
There's
that's the
not
thing is they gotta spend it before Mufti comes through.
right.
I don't
Such a
feel
cool
like it's,
project.
it is a really cool project. I love the concept. I love the idea. I don't feel comfortable using these funds that are specific for this in a way that is risky like that.
Who's making the decision on Mufti? Can we get him on the horn?
Well, I mean, the way it works is if it goes through Parks and Rec, which it seemed like it was going pretty well in the last session, then there's no voting anymore.
Okay.
So if that's the case, then we're good.
The ask of Parks and Rec is that they would approve a certain amount outside the TIF district. Basically carte blanche per year. That number is 34.5 million. Our project is below that. And we're the only applicant outside of the TIF district. So as long as Parks and Rec agrees to that concept, that every year they would agree that $34.5 million worth of building gets exempted, then our project can get approved. There is a possible approval outside of that. We were approved by the county. And there was support, city, the school district, and we only need 51% of the taxing district. So then Parks and Rec could say no, and if the other 3 taxing districts say yes, we still get it. So, but it sounds like the city and the program is trying to make it easier for buildings to apply for this program. And so there's a couple different paths to getting it. It just, I think, takes a little while for that to go through. We're not opposed conceptually to the idea of attaching it to Mupti, but the timing is hard when we're in here in 6 weeks.
I see Lynn turn her camera on and I can also answer questions about the Mufti program.
No, I was just gonna fill in the blanks that the hiatus team just did on Mufti and sort of what that process is. I don't know that I have anything else to add on that. Council, either it's decided at the individual tax level, taxing district level, in which case they exempt only their portion of the property taxes. Or it's exempted once they reach 51% of taxing districts by our city council for the whole term, if that makes sense. So that's what council decides. Did they hit that 51% or not? We are reforming the program right now into allowing city council to decide on behalf of taxing districts, but we're working on getting their permission in the meantime so that we can make that decision. So I think there's a lot of energy from city council in that direction. There's a lot of, they've expressed interest in moving this program around, so it's a little more effective for folks, and there's not quite as much up and down with the different districts, but we're not quite there yet.
Did that help?
It lowered the risk a little bit.
I think it's important to know that the micro apartment code was also approved as a middle income housing type. And we're the first ones to do it again, because what we did with the cottage code, and when you go first, it's expensive. you know, and our goal is not to have the most expensive 120% AMI apartment. Our goal is to get it done, so there's an example of it in our city. So I think that's something that you should consider.
I appreciate that, but I also I don't want everybody to feel like they should advocate for themselves right here.
Fair enough.
Any other conversation from the committee?
Well, I think it depends on where these numbers go.
Are there ways you'd like to see the numbers shift?
I mean, I'm still uncomfortable with funding hiatus. I mean, again, I would like to fund hiatus, but if there's not gonna be deed restriction, I'm just wearing my hat of what are these dollars for?
So it's for middle housing and middle housing. Middle housing projects and middle housing AMI borrowers for purchase and renters.
Right.
So technically, this is a middle housing project that falls within the city of Bend's middle housing definition
Right now.
right now.
Right now. But
Like-
part
But
of that
it's-
too is the deed
Go ahead.
restriction and
I think
maintaining
there's
it.
two concepts and they're slightly different. Middle housing are those missing middle units, right? Duplex, triplex, cottage, micro units, blah, blah, blah. Middle income housing is about the income of the people in the unit. So this is a middle income housing program.
It's not a middle housing type.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I'm wearing that middle income housing hat, and
Right.
that's why I'm getting
Middle
stuck
income,
on
okay.
this.
Yeah, being able to ensure that that's what it is, and that's who it serves.
Well, we have been on the topic for a bit. I know we have folks that do have a hard stop coming up. Would anyone like to make a motion? Or adjust the numbers? My sense is probably we'll need, this may take more than one motion. But it feels like we haven't adjusted these numbers in a bit, so let's find a better solution or propose to move forward.
Well, should we see? Should we move to vote on these? And if we don't get approval, then we'll adjust.
You want to itemize
Sure.
the motion? Yes, please.
Are you saying itemize each one, but then if we don't vote on one, then we have to redo it?
The motion he'll make will state the amounts for every single one of them, and we'll vote on those as a block.
And if it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
If it doesn't, then we come back and we
Right.
What if
See what
we
needs to
just
change.
took the thing from hiatus?
accept the motion. So that has motion in a second.
Yeah.
So I guess, Rachel, what if we zeroed out the funding for hiatus?
You want me to zero it out?
And then how do we want to reallocate that?
I think you have the floor.
I think we'd have enough to fully fund everyone else, correct?
No,
Not Hayden. Not Hayden.
But you want to see.
Maybe we could fully fund neighborhood impacts. It's not that much more than we were proposing, and then the balance to Hayden.
225.
But I'm not sure that a partial funding is going to help, is it?
What they said from Hayden was that they would help in proportion to the amount that the grant was.
It might not be 20 lots, it might be 10 if we only fund it.
So either the lots would change or the amount would change.
Okay.
I move to make motion to fund Habitat hiatus at 75,000, Hayden Homes at 225,000, Neighbor Impact down payment assistance for 200,000, for a total of 500.
No, I would only tweak the motion language to say,
With-
I recommend to council.
I recommend to council all of the previous things.
All right. As a vote, all in favor, raise your hand for that motion. All opposed? Motion passes. Okay. We have potentially time for staff report. And I'll move for staff report.
We can. Let me just check with Lynn. Lynn, do you think we can send out staff report information, or is there anything urgent we need to go through today?
I think a couple things, if it's okay, really quickly. Thanks, everyone. Really great discussion. That was tough. Appreciate all the thought you put into that, and it's good stuff. So we have a renovation, but Amy, I'm jumping in. We have a renovation budget at City Council for the Lighthouse Navigation Center coming up soon. So keep an eye on that. We wanted to make sure that you knew that that was coming. And we'll mail the reports for the Navigation Center, et cetera. We'll also be doing surplus next month. So ideally, if you have the ability to have some flexibility and what time you need to walk out of council chambers next month, that would be great, because I'm guessing we will have a lot of interest in the surplus parcels we're offering. Based on how much we have to get done, we are shifting our funding cycle just a little bit to allow you a month off between surplus and when we really dive into funding. This is partly because the state has adjusted their funding calendar, and so we're not in quite the hurry that we usually are. And this will really allow us to catch up on a number of discussions, including the one we had to boot today, to make sure that we're able to incorporate your feedback and needs into what we next do in scoring. Finally, and this is really quick, the code that you all recommended, code changes to City Council through Ian at Committee Council check-in, is moving forward, and we're really excited about this. So you all are doing some great work. Planning Commission will have a work session on the 25th, and then they'll have their hearing on the 9th. So I believe that that first one happens before our next AHAC meeting and immediately after as well. So just know that that's happening, and it's slated to go to council for first reading on October 1st, which means that it would be effective by the end of the year. So great work on that. Know that that's out there, and if we want to participate in those discussions later, that's something to think about.
There's also been lots of public comment and information sent to us staff to share with you, but we are going to be sharing that at future AHAC meetings because we had such a tight agenda, such as we'll be relooking at or giving you the option to relook at the loan versus grant policy as well. And that's all that I think we had for staff report. That was.
Yeah. Thank you all so much.
I do want to say thank you to the committee. Those are difficult decisions, and by far the best discussion we've had in the last, I think, 3 years. On any funding cycle. So thank you all for speaking up. All right.